Obi-Datti Global Fundraising Telethon 2023, the first ever on the scene of the internet, of the physicality of Nigeria. Thank you so very much. Okay, we still have so many donations coming in. We'd like to say thank you to all of you who have donated. Do not forget that you can get the link on your screen. Yes, the diaspora donors, just click on the barcode. And for Nigerians here, if you want to donate, and for those of you who have donated, I'm sure you made use of that accurately. And if peradventure you still want to donate because you've been hearing so many things that would, make you do more, yeah, you can just send in your donations to the FCMB account or EcoBank account. Peradventure you're just tuning in, I would like to remind you that this is Obi-Datti Global Fundraising Telethon. And yes, we have earlier talked about the health sector with Professor Pat Utomi, and of course with his team. Right about now, we're delving straight into the economy of Nigeria. Nigeria needs a lot of support it can get for us to rank to the top. And we have to do that with money. We need more investors to come in. You need to shake your pocket. You need to have for yourself and enough to give to yourself, to your family, to your society. So right about now, it is the economy. I'll take you to Professor Pat Utomi to do justice.
Well, thank you so very much, Adeboye. The question of the state of the Nigerian economy is central to everything. Security, the basics of healthcare, like we've talked about, everything revolves around the economy. One American presidential candidate who became president said, listen, is the economy stupid? it's the economy. Everything revolves around the economy. One of the things that we have done wrong in Nigeria is we've got the economy quite wrong. But I'd like to set the tone from the manifesto. Joining us via Zoom, two professors from the Lagos Business School, Franklin Ngu and Bongo Adi. Perhaps I should ask that they provide a brief summary of the position in the manifesto on the economy. Maybe we'll go first with Bongo. Is Bongo there?
Yes, Prof, I'm here.
Okay, Bongo.
Yes.
What, in summary form, does the manifesto say about how to get this engine cracking again?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Prof, and welcome everyone to this program. Yeah, like just as Prof said, everything revolves around the economy. And then the manifesto took its departure from the state of the economy. What we have today is a rentier economic system, where, it's difficult actually to place Nigeria's economy on the spectrum of economic models. Some people will say we have a mixed economy, but if you follow what has been going on in the past few years, you will know that it is neither here nor there. We're more like a socialist system where the government retook the commanding height of the economy, not because it had any good interest or any sort of, the interest of the people at heart to begin to allocate resources in an efficient manner. By the way, government has never been a good allocator of resources. But that is what we have seen happen in our economy in the past 7 to 8 years now. So where the government took over the commanding heights of the economy by, trying to reallocate resources. So creating all manner of subsidies. So we now have a misaligned macroeconomic system. The fiscal buffers have nothing in connection, with the planks, other economic planks. So we have a situation where the fiscal is running at its own pace. Whether it's running or not is also something up for debate. And then the macroeconomy is also on its own levers. So at the end of the day, as we've noticed, the macroeconomy has no longer any control on the economy. So what do I mean by that? You've seen the central bank raising rates, which is targeted at curtailing inflation and things like that. But we've seen that macroeconomic policy over the years have become sterile. They've become unable to effect any sort of change or to correct the anomalies in the economy. Why did that happen? It's simply because of the way the government has managed the economy, a subsidy-driven economy, a rentier system, so which benefits just a few people. There is no efficiency in the system. So our manifesto started from there. Now, the first thing that will happen is that we have to dismantle all these structures of systems of subsidy. Well, they are not actually subsidy. So let's call them rent-seeking systems, because if it is subsidy, you will now be looking at, okay, the question will be who is benefiting from the subsidy or who is the subsidy helping? Because if you subsidize a product or a service or any sort of good, as we have with petroleum, the fuel, the PMS, when we subsidize it, the target would be to help the poor, help small businesses. But then you notice that those people are not the beneficiary of that subsidy. So the subsidy is still hijacked by the same rent-seeking system. So it doesn't work. So the first thing the manifesto, the government of the day would do is to dismantle all those systems. So when those systems are dismantled, revenue will begin to flow back to the coffers of the government. Because what we have right now, apart from the huge debt overhang, remember before 2015, Nigeria was not a highly indebted poor country that it has become today. By 2005, we got ourselves off the debt hook, okay? And then that actually set the economy on a new spiral of growth. So consistently for over 10 years, or about 10 years, a decade, that is during the Obasanjo and then the beginning period of Jonathan's regime, we had a sustained economic growth that averaged 6%. That was because we were kind of tending towards a market-driven system, where demand and supply and the price system kind of determined the allocation of resources. That really worked and benefited the economy. Most Nigerians in diaspora actually started, in fact, we had a reverse brain drain. People started coming back to Nigeria because Nigeria started looking, holding very positive prospects for prosperity, for well-being, and for people to meet their aspirations. So we had our people coming from all parts of the globe to take up positions in Nigeria. But that, of course, that frittered away by 2015 when the current administration came to power. Now, they started to pursue what I call a socialist system, so which started to disrupt the market to create distortions all over the place. So whether in the fiscal system or in the macroeconomic system, we had that overriding ambition of populism. So populist policies never helped anybody. So that is the first thing that the manifesto tackled, and then what our administration will do as soon as our president comes into power. We have to dismantle all those systems, to liberate the economy from the stranglehold of rent seeking. So once that is done, so we are sure that we can now have the revenue to begin to build up all the necessary, things within the economic system. So let me leave it there. So the first thing is that the macroeconomic, mainstreaming, we are going to dismantle the system of rent seeking, okay? Which of course is what fuels corruption. So once we tackle that, we are sure that corruption will be reduced by about 25%. Do not forget that our principal said that, okay, if he gets into power, if he's not stealing, his wife is not corrupt, and then his family is not corrupt, and those around him are not corrupt, corruption will reduce by 50%. So when we dismantle the rent-seeking system that we have in the macroeconomic, angle, corruption will further reduce by 25%. So we now have 25% to deal with, and that will be handled through institutional reforms that we have also proposed. So I will leave it at that point, Prof. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bongo. Franklin, is Franklin in a position to join us right away to look at the points of emphasis, that certain things that must be emphasized if you are to get an economy go from what is often described as consumption to production. To go away from rent seeking, as Bongo has shown, which is at the heart of the Nigerian economy. Most of the choices that are made to advance the extraction of rent by a certain privileged group. That's simply the basis of policymaking in Nigeria today. Now, if you are going to stop the hemorrhage, cut rent seeking, if you are going to cut your coat according to your cloth, as General Obasanjo said many, many years ago, sort of continuing in this profligate manner when your revenues are declining, oil stealing is preventing you from earning as much as you should, etc., etc. What should be the emphasis? What are the focus points before we then come to a general conversation around economic strategy? Yeah, Franklin, are you able to connect? Okay, all right. Since Professor Franklin Ngu seems not to be connected, we can go into this conversation.
Okay, I'm able to connect now.
Okay, great, Franklin. Okay, take it off.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you can see me and you can hear me. In terms of just taking up from where Professor Bongo stopped, is that the key thing that needs to be done is, of course, for you to revive an economy, you have to look at three policy directions. One is the monetary policy, two is the fiscal policy, and three is the supply side policies. So, of course, we all agree that in this in this current regime, it seems that the fiscal policy side has been on the back seat. And that's why it seems like the monetary policy under the CBN is more or less pursuing both monetary policy and as well as fiscal policy and even supply side policies. So I think the key thing that we need to do to start reviving the economy is, first of all, that the monetary policy institution, which is the CBN, should focus more on its core responsibility. And the fiscal policy side should also be up and running with regard to what they are supposed to do. And there has to be a clear harmony between the two in terms of how do they drive Nigerian economy revival. And of course, the need for also to attend to the supply side policies. But on top of that, there are 3 or 4 things that needs to be done urgently. One is, how do we, as we are actually pointed out before, how do we urgently remove the subsidy? As we all know, subsidy for the year will take almost 6-point-something trillion. So even if you remove subsidy, it means that you have about 6 trillion that you can reallocate to education, health, which will definitely help in terms of reviving the economy. As we also know, the difference between the rich and poor countries mainly lie on education and health, which is Human Development Index. In addition to removing the subsidy, we also look at the cost of governance in Nigeria in terms of how do we significantly reduce it. Interestingly, it's been said that some people are stingy, some people are not stingy. So some people are, Mr. Peter Obi is now saying that Nigeria needs a stingy person because he's going to manage the economy prudently in terms of managing public resources efficiently. So in addition, so we've mentioned the subsidy, removal of the subsidy, then reducing the cost of governance. Then also in terms of how do we start looking at the issue of insecurity. If we're able to tackle insecurity very well, it means that our mainstay of our GDP, of the economy, which is agriculture, will be properly revived. It means that people can go back to the farms. It means that people can now start farming properly. It means that output in the agricultural sector will now come up, which will also link to the mantra of emphasizing moving from consumption to production. Because even if we are if we are good in agriculture, it means that the agricultural outputs will now be used in other sectors of the economy so that we can now start moving from, will I say, first industrial revolution to second to third, and possibly to fourth industrial revolution, which is also in the manifesto as well. So these are a few things that needs to be done urgently. So at least in the first few months of the administration, if it comes in, to start reviving the economy. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Franklin. I've got Mr. Maduka and Dr. Njenje here with me, and the big question is, some people think the task is too daunting. I mean, things are so far gone, so bad that, can anybody fix this? What are your thoughts on saving the Nigerian economy? I think it's too far gone.
What?
Perhaps you can start. Okay.
I can start.
Yes.
No, of course, things are not too far gone.
Okay.
If you look at countries like Rwanda, at some point in our thoughts, it was completely over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but look at them today, like the stars of the continent. Everybody's going, everybody's looking to them for direction. So no, we're not too far from it. There's hope, which is really why we're sitting here.
Right.
So we build on that, and then we start our country, we start our economy.
Yeah, and I think that, like Franklin mentioned, one of the points he mentioned was the security. And if nobody is going to invest in a hostile environment, and we need to raise, and what I see P2B doing in all his trips overseas and all that, is to build confidence. And the economy thrives on confidence. Investment can only happen when there is confidence in the economy. If I'm confident that money will come in the next month, I can spend what I have now. But if I'm not sure of what's going to happen, I can hold on to what I have. So we need that investment and all that. Like in the 90s, a nosy journalist asked a Belgian ambassador to Nigeria, why Belgian investors are not investing in Nigeria. He said to the journalist, when Nigerian rich men begin to invest in Nigeria, have the confidence to invest in Nigeria, then foreigners will join suit. So it will encourage domestic investors as well.
And this is very, very important because, I mean, investment is a function of capital.
Yeah.
You have to have capital to invest and then generate the growth and so on and so forth. But we find that savings don't seem to figure in the consciousness of today's leading policymakers.
That's right.
I mean, I thought that the idea of referring to P2B as stingy was the silliest thing that shows people don't understand how economies grow.
Yeah.
You know, to say, the man is stingy, he saved money.
Yeah.
Why didn't he use it for the people?
Yeah.
Did the quality of life of the people get any worse from what was done with the money that was spent? Now, there's a famous economist at Columbia University back in the 50s called Ragnar Noxe. And his mantra was, capital is made at home.
Yeah.
All this foreign investment we are praying for and hoping does not come in, it really happens, like the Belgian ambassador said,
Yes.
when there's domestic savings and investment and they see the opportunity and then they rush in. But there has been almost irresponsibility in the way that most of those in the current order think of public resources. Spend, no consciousness of savings. To compound that, still on this issue of capital, we have the fact that a lot of the assets we have can be converted to capital.
Yes.
You know, as Fernando de Soto, the Peruvian economist, likes to preach. We have a lot of dead assets, dead capital. You know, we are assets because simple things like having a proper representational system, to use the language, but let's call it a land registry, where you can buy and sell houses without any problem. So people can lend you against any kind of land asset, for example, that you have. We've been preaching this for years. State governments have not managed to improve those representational systems, not realizing that is a critical part of how capital formation takes place. So you look at these problems, and you can even go further on that. the way that our regulators manage things that reduce confidence. And then finally, a very big issue, Ayo Teriba likes to emphasize this point. Most of the inflow of resources into countries like Brazil, India, China comes from having an asset register that is available to the world in a way that the world can bring in capital to develop those assets. Give a simple example. Here in Lagos, there is a national secretariat that was abandoned 30-something years ago to still wasting assets.
That's right.
Whatever the legal issues, whatever, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter. If we think we're serious people, we should have sorted whatever the issues are. Hundreds, literally thousands of such assets are doing nothing around the country. Whereas if we listed them, we did the right thing for the regulatory environment, literally billions of dollars will come in. Let's take that national secretariat, for example. Can you imagine people bringing in $2-3 billion to convert that place into some, let's even call it a hotel or whatever complex? You know how many thousands of Nigerians will get jobs there? You know, so this failure to think about it is part of failure of development.
Yeah. Prof, sorry, I just recall, the Singapore thing. When I visited Singapore on a study tour, there was, this issue of savings, which you rightly mentioned. That government is like forced savings.
Forced savings is at the heart of Singapore's development.
Yes, and then that forced savings, made people to become conscious of their own lifestyle.
Yeah.
From when you are a single person, you graduate from university at 21, you get a job, government will force you to begin to save. Once you're 25, you move to an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment. When you begin to have children, you move to a bigger apartment and all that. So they plan their destiny like that. And I think that is what the government of P2B is also planning to do. Yeah.
The savings culture is obviously necessary for capital formation. However, I think where the wage rate is so low that most people cannot afford things. So even if you want to think, your cost of living is so high, your wage is so low, you really cannot save. So one person pays reasonable wages to people. Imagine a police, for instance, who earns 30,000 naira. What exactly is meant to do? You have a child, you have a wife, you meant to be rented, so already you are pushing that man into corruption. He doesn't want to corruption, but he almost has no choice by the time
to survive.
Yes, you have to survive. Right?
Yeah. So true. So true. The thing is that one commitment of the Obi-Datti push is to increase wages. And you take like the police force as a classic example. I cannot imagine that a policeman should earn less than 100,000 naira as basic wage. I really personally can't imagine that. But policies then facilitate people who now earn better, and it's not just people, but institutions to save. If you look at the Singapore story, all of the things they did in Singapore, we actually tried to do. At the same time, ours failed woefully, theirs succeeded remarkably. National Housing Fund. Where is the money? It was the HDB, Housing Development Board of Singapore, and the savings that were forced that led to most of the major investments in this Durang Industrial Park and all of those. But what happened? Because of corruption. I'm trying to make people understand why fighting corruption is such an important thing. Because of corruption, the same initiative at the same time in Nigeria failed massively. Suddenly, we couldn't find the money for the National Housing Scheme. But Singapore took it as forced savings, invested, and grew their economy. So there's a relationship that Nigerians need to understand and own the change that is desired for this economy to grow.
And Prof, you saw that we had Obi-Datti Ranch for 2 weeks on this program that we had for scenario planning, Nigeria 2025. And we came out with 3 scenarios. You made a presentation. I was part of the, logistics and all that. So, and out of that, we had, we observed that we had never had opportunity, Nigeria never had opportunity of having someone that understands the economy in the helm of affairs, a president that understands the economy. Unlike other countries that even though they don't understand, but they can learn about it, but none of them willing to. The only person that even tried was Obasanjo, that tried to understand the economy. So we said, okay, by 2025, this is the way. If we are lucky to have an entrepreneurial leader, a president, then the economy can grow by 10, 15%. Then if we are also lucky to have autocratic, benevolent autocrat like a Singapore mandate, we're also going to have, some growth. Then, but the other one is going to do with Somalia. But what I'm saying is that for the first time, we are going to have, by the grace of God, a president that understands the economy.
Yeah. So we're going to try and move on to other aspects very quickly because people are waiting for us. We've got Dr. Jerome Okolo to talk about power and economic development. But in terms of general strategy, the manifesto captures a commitment to a strategy to move from consumption to production, which looks at agriculture. A good part of Nigeria, in northern parts of Nigeria, endowed with land area that is fertile. The threat of the rivers becoming opportunity through damming the Benue and Niger rivers in ways that will, instead of flooding and killing our people, we will have irrigated all-season farming across these places, boost agriculture in a dramatic way, and begin to transform them in industrial parks across the country into products that can be exported, consumed locally, improve the quality of lives of people. I think that a sense for this as the real crucible of how you turn around an economy that is in trouble.
That's right.
Is what we need to go on to by turning to a fundamental thing for building a manufacturing economy, power. If we said, perhaps we can take Jerome Okolo on power. The manifesto paid a lot of attention to how we can get power up and running. Nigeria has had an almost tragic experience with generating power. Are we ready to bring Jerome on power? Because you see, for years, I hosted an annual conference on power. And I keep talking about how when the late engineer Joe Makoju and Lely Moke were essentially the focal persons on power. They came to one of those conferences at the Lagos Business School on power. And they said, I'll never forget that, comparing us to South Africa, that on a per capita basis, if we were to just reach the South African level, and this was like 20 years ago, Nigeria needed to actually generate 88,000 megawatts of power. And today we're still talking about 5,000, the three work. Oh, we can actually generate 6 possibly, but this kind of stuff we hear every day. And we've seen Egypt just do dramatic things in raising power past 50-something thousand megawatts with population significantly half of ours, and so on and so forth. Power is therefore a crucial part of this economic conversation. So are we ready to take Jerome on? Dr. Jerome Okolo is the focal person in our review, policy review and Future View team. And he has tried to summarize the power discussion in the manifesto, and then we'll be joined by a few other people with expertise, including, and this is very interesting, we're going to bring on from the United States a power sector investor to reflect on the Obi-Datti Manifesto on power. Give us a view of a foreigner who invests in power around the world and what they think of the position of a manifesto on power, and see how we can really ratchet up this subject.
Before Jerome comes on, I just want to make a few comments on the importance of power to economic growth. You discover that power constitutes between 65 and 85% of manufacturing component.
In Nigeria. Yes.
And you recall that when Lamido Sanusi was central bank governor, he gave about 400 or 600 billion to the textile industry. Most of them rejected it. They said, look, if there is no power, there's no way they're still going to use that money to generate this. The only way to make sense to them is when there is power, and that's why the textile industry is still in the comatose the way it is.
There's a gentleman called Charlton. He's a Canadian gentleman, married a daughter of the Cha Group founder of the Hong Kong Chinese gentleman who built the big textile mill in Kaduna back in the early 60s.
Yes.
I was at a conference in Annecy in France, Europe-Africa Summit. And he was there, some African heads of state and all of this. And we're talking about the challenges of African development. And he said, look, their factory could have been in the stratosphere, literally speaking, in terms of producing for export from Nigeria, but for power.
Yeah.
He even suggested a regional strategy where you can produce certain things in Mali, some in Ghana, because there are better places for power, and that combined with Nigeria, and they could still be competitive. And this was, let's go back to mid-90s, and we watch the textile industry, second biggest employer of labor in the country after government, literally just disintegrate. Trade policy was so badly managed through the years. And so one of the things that the Obi-Datti team is going to focus on, and frankly, Raises even talked about fiscal policy issues. Trade policy is so critical to competitiveness. And it's interesting, the Chinese born lady, who's, I guess she's American now, at McKinsey, Irene Sun, who has studied this whole thing, has written this book on Africa, the world's next factory. And she talks about the failure of trade policy in Nigeria and how it led to the collapse of the textile industry. We must be able to get the best Nigerians around the world who understand trade policy. Interestingly, a Nigerian is now the CEO at the World Trade WTO. World Trade Organization. I think that her role there should be helpful to help him build capacity in trade policy, which has been a major bane of the Nigerian economy. Okay, so if Jerome has not come on, but the truth is, Jerome is standing by physically, but there's also a pre-recorded conversation with Jerome. I think we could start with that pre-recorded conversation and then transit to him physically where he is. I wonder if Shibizo is ready for that.
My fellow Nigerians, once in every 4 years, we're given an opportunity to end our pains or recycle it. Once in every 4 years, we're given an opportunity to end corruption or renew it. Once in every 4 years, we're given an opportunity to end poverty or reactivate it. That opportunity is here again, perhaps the most important in the next 4 years. Will you use it to take back Nigeria or sell it for selfish reasons? My fellow Nigerians, you can't vote in a tired person and expect a vibrant administration. You can't vote in mediocrity and expect excellence in return. We are in a defining moment with only one credible candidate on the presidential ballot. We checked him out and he checked out. His track records are commendable. His knowledge of the North, South, East, and West is second to none. He's a force whose time has come. My fellow Nigerians, I present to you the man of the moment. His name is Peter Gregory Obi, a man that will defend us, not a man we will spend another 4 years defending. A man that will manage our resources well, and not a man we will have to manage again. Vote Peter Gregory Obi of the Labour Party for president.
We must change the managers of Nigeria. Every part of Nigeria is important to us. People are dying. It's a crisis. And the only people that can stop that crisis is you. We need to take it back. We have no other.